Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. Today I have 12 glitch in the matrix and supernatural stories for you, a few of them being rather unsettling. I thought I'd spice up the end of the month. We start off with a late night train ride, headphones in, and a mysterious girl. Case file number 2299, written by Text on Him. Backpack, beats, and a girl. I live in a lush green, sleepy edge of the city, but with lots of buildings, and usually come back home late at night, like the last train before the once-an-hour night bus starts playing. Most of the time, I'm the only one on the train who gets off at my stop, occasionally couples who have been to concerts or something in the neighboring city. So one night, I got off. I usually had headphones on, and I'm pretty sure I didn't see anyone else get off the train with me. I also did a turnaround looking at the door before the doors closed, to think if I had everything I was carrying. And I turn around to walk to the stairs going down, and there's a girl with a long jacket turned in the direction of the stairs, just waiting there with her head down. She has a tiny backpack. I was shocked. I didn't see anyone else on the platform as the train stopped, not even after the doors opened, and no one got off the train. The distance between the stairs and where my doors opened is long enough that I would have definitely noticed. Anyway, it appeared as if she was dug into her phone, and I was startled, but with the music playing, I didn't give it any more thought and proceeded walking towards the stairs. At this point, I'm thinking, why is she wearing a jacket? It's so warm that I just can't carry the backpack on my back, with the shirt sticking to my back drenched in sweat. So I take off my bag, and this girl from the platform is hopping down next to me like she's in a hurry. I thought maybe she got off at the wrong stop and needed help. This was the last stop before a long journey to the next town, so I wanted to help her, and I took off my headphones. I said hello, but she said nothing. She was quick and down the stairs. I get out of the station, and she is there, 2 meters ahead of me, again with her head bowed, like she's into her phone. But as I go closer, I realize there is no phone. Her hands are down. I think this is strange, but she didn't acknowledge my hello. So I don't approach her and walk past thinking, strange. She can't be homeless. She's dressed with nice and long neat hair and a nice long jacket. The walk home is like 4 minutes. I put on my headphones and I'm listening to music again. And a minute later, this girl is walking hurriedly next to me. This time it scared me, her sudden appearance. I put on my backpack, and I'm really scared by this point. I didn't see her face, but I was also making my pace to walk ahead, and I didn't really look in her direction to check for her face. I'm scared, lots of ghostly thoughts running in my mind, seeing the turn to the private street to my gated community before I make a run. The girl makes a sprint and takes turns into my street. By this time, I'm so scared, I'm looking around if there is some vehicle coming, or some lights on in the buildings on the street, someone on the balcony, but nothing. It's late, an empty street, a heavily sweating me, reluctant to go into the street to my building. What I do, I have grabbed some stones, maybe out of instinct from childhood of scaring away stray dogs, and walk into the street. I don't see this girl. It's a long private street, and the turn was blind, and it wasn't very long. Even if she ran, she couldn't enter the gates without any keys, and the lights on the street turned on only after I got there, so there was no way she was on the street. Strange, relieved, but strange. I don't wear headphones anymore while walking on the street. Was this just my imagination when I was tired? But everything was so real. I left a friend a voice message about this. He said you sound tired, and that's it. Case file number 2300, written by Major 212. When the lights go out, time does too. I was in my best friend's house with another friend of ours. We were all 10 or 11 years old at the time. My friend's father was at work, and her mother told us to stay home, while she went to a store across the street. She briefed us as to what to do in case of an emergency, even though she would be gone for only 5 minutes at max. Once my friend's mother had left, the lights went out. We peeped out of the window to see if her mother was still there, and if the lights were out anywhere else. Her mother was gone, and there were lights everywhere else. As you can imagine, this totally creeped us out, but we tried to go upstairs and get my friend's flashlight. When we reached upstairs, the window on the landing flung open with a rush of wind coming inside. I vaguely remember seeing an outline of a person floating in the sky. We ran up, went to her room, took the flashlight, and ran down as fast as possible. We could hear the neighbors' dogs howling and all sorts of eerie noises. We decided to call her mother to come back, so we tried, but the phone wouldn't work, although it was working just fine when her mother showed it to us a few minutes ago. All three of us started praying and holding hands. It felt like we waited forever. We kept checking the clock for time, and according to us, around 30 minutes had passed. The lights came on, and her father came almost at the same time. We screamed so loud. Her father asked us what had happened, and we narrated the whole incident. In the meantime, her mother came home, and we told her what had happened. She pointed to the clock and showed us that it had in fact been only 5 minutes. But all three of us, to this day, know for sure that at least more than 30 minutes had passed that night, full of eerie noises and weird things happening around us. Localized time distortions do occur, but it can't account for the weird noises. Case file number 2301, written by Dictatorial Headshake. The Scar and a very strange alien plot. I was having some weird dreams in my early 20s, and I thought something was wrong with me, like with depression and crap like that. I always felt tired, and had these maybe irrational thoughts that I was being abducted at night by aliens. One night, I had a very vivid, very real feeling dream. I was throwing a party in this underground concrete-looking storage facility. In one of the storage units was a lot of my family's belongings, specifically my grandmother's heirlooms, etc. To get inside this place, you had to go down a long ladder, and when you would look up at the entrance, you could see the night sky full of stars. The party was raging, but I was stressing that there were no locks on the storage units. Partygoers kept wandering inside them to make out, nose around, or straight up steal things. Party was in full swing when someone yelled, "Oh crap, the cops are here!" Everyone started scrambling, and they all seemed to make it out of the building. However, I was still there because people were trying to run off with my family's heirlooms, and I was trying to protect them. About 5 FBI-looking men and women, dressed in suits and with clipboards and walkie-talkies, started to descend down the ladder, as well as a handful of people dressed in some sort of white worker overalls or radiation suits. The workers started to grab my family's items, and the suits ignored my pleas to answer me what the hell was going on. It was like I was invisible. They just walked around, talking into their walkie-talkies, and not even looking or hearing me. But before I knew what was happening, one of them slipped a sort of headphone device over my head, and sat me down and placed a bright light at the back of me. The headphones didn't touch my head, but floated just right above it. It allowed me to be aware and move my eyes, but I couldn't speak or move anything else. It also allowed me to feel no pain, I was about to find out. One of the suits sat me down, while another brought in this thick, extra-large binder and opened it up right to the side of me. I could feel that someone was doing something to the back of my head. They started flipping through this binder, and when I moved my eyes to look, the photos were of all these different microchips, for a lack of a better explanation, and some strange writing near each that looked as if they gave information about the chips. The writing was not of this world. The person brought what they had removed from the back of my head close to the binder. He was holding this teal-colored, chiclet gum-looking thing with all those lines that a microchip has. The woman flipping through the binder stopped on the one that looked exactly like the one removed from my head. She exclaimed, a little disappointingly, "Oh, she's one of those." I woke up after that, but everything went black. Nothing left. Fast forward a year or so later. I had this very new-to-me haircut where the back of my head was a buzz cut, and the rest was a maroon-colored bob. I was having an actual party. In fact, it was my 22nd birthday. The party was lit, and I was standing outside, in a sea of discarded red party cups, making out with some hot-tongued guy. We were kissing and getting a little toasty. And he was rubbing the back of my head and mentioned that he liked the feeling of the shaved back part of my head. He stopped moving his hand all over and was focusing on one area in the back of my head. He asked, "What's that?" I asked him back, "What's what?" He said I had some sort of scar or something. He looked and said, "Yep, there's a scar back there. What happened?" I ran to the bathroom, and using another mirror, he showed me. It was a perfect little half-inch scar on the back of my head. I felt the world stop dead like a record stopping, and all the goosebumps birthed goosebumps. After that, I dove deep into trying to figure out what the hell all that meant. I asked my parents, everyone, if there was something that had happened to the back of my head to make a scar like that, but they knew of nothing. So I was thinking, was it aliens? Was it some government agency? I never let anything completely take over my explanation because everything was a possibility. Nearly drove me mad. I will say, since they took out the chip out of my head in my dream, I have not been the same. It's hard to explain, but some type of spark, some little bit of my purpose disappeared. So how's for that for weird and unbelievable? Pretty good. Damn creepy though. It's almost like they removed a part of your soul. Given your final description, although my guess is it wasn't your soul, it's maybe the interface connecting to it? Whatever your brain is interfacing to connect to it, something like that. And yeah, aliens or government, I mean, it could be either. I don't know which one's more terrifying. Case file number 2302, written by Darth Monkey. Chilling on the shore, chilled to the core. One summer, in the early 2000s, my family went to the beach. It was packed that day. My cousin, age 6, and I, age 10, were building sandcastles on the sandbar at the shoreline. My parents and her mom, my aunt, were set up about 10-ish meters back on the dry sand. We are still quite visible to them. A young couple approached us and knelt down to talk to us, asking about the sandcastle, small talk, etc. I don't remember the exact words, but they started talking about how they also had a 10-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl. I was already uneasy about them, but this was just weird. Then they asked if we wanted to go with them for some reason. I remember saying something like, "I'll be right back," and went and told my parents. My aunt freaked out that I left my little cousin there, and she ran to go get her. But they had completely vanished without any path out. The young couple was just gone. I know I shouldn't have left her alone, but I knew she was still in sight. I'm 32 now, and it's something I still think about sometimes. Case file number 2303, written by Just Say Bless You. Divorce, drinks, and a damn alien. When I was in 3rd grade, my mom and dad were getting a divorce. We, my mom, younger brother, 3 younger sisters, and I, all moved up to my mom's home state and into a small 2-bedroom trailer out in the countryside. My mom was dealing with some emotional issues and drinking a lot, leaving us home alone most weekend nights. We would always hear scratches on the side or footsteps outside, but we mostly assumed it was tall weeds or animals wandering around at night. One night, it was relatively calm outside, and my mom had gone out drinking, leaving me to take care of my brother and sisters. We all sat in the living room, watching movies on tapes. Suddenly, we heard the back door open and slam shut. We all stood up, and slowly made our way towards the back half of our trailer. My brother and I stayed ahead of the group, and we peeked into the short hallway that led into our bathroom and bedroom. The light was off, and we were too scared to walk a few feet into the darkness to flip on the light switch. Being horrible siblings, we tried and failed to force my youngest sister to take a peek. I managed to build up the courage to take a few steps towards the light switch. Then I saw something move. I took a step back, and my siblings huddled around me. I held my breath as something took a few steps out of the darkness. It was an alien. It looked like the stereotypical little alien with a big head, oversized eyes, small mouth, and small stature. We all screamed and ran to the living room, and we heard the door open and slam shut again. We stayed up pretty late that night. After a period of time, we went and checked our bedroom and the bathroom and didn't see anything. The back door wouldn't lock for some reason or other, so we found some string and tied it to something to try and keep it closed. My mom showed up sometime in the middle of the night and found us all sleeping in the living room. She was pissed at us. I explained why, but of course she didn't listen to us. I don't know why, but I'm the only one who remembers seeing what it looked like. Everyone else remembers being scared of something that came inside our home, but they don't remember seeing it. So first off, how did your mother get custody? It doesn't sound like she was particularly nice. Anyways, the memory block is pretty common in alien stories, where people as they grow up, if they had traumatic experiences, it's not just aliens, they'll suppress those memories. Maybe blur it out or forget it altogether. Just a defense mechanism of our minds. Case file number 2304, written by Vaninya. Dear Ghost, enjoy the TV. I live in an apartment with my husband and son. My husband works from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., so I was alone with my infant son at night. I walked out of my room and a small towel that was sitting on top of a basket of laundry seemed to jump off the top of the pile onto the floor. I rationalized that as the swinging of the door opened and it caught a breeze. Then I was playing with my son in his room and kept hearing shuffling of plates or something in the kitchen. I go out and it stops and there's nothing happening. I rationalized that by saying I'm in an apartment and it was probably someone else's stuff in their apartment, even though it was definitely close sounding, but I have to rationalize it. I put my son to bed and went into my room to chill. The door opened slightly. I really start thinking this is weird at this point, but what can I do? It was probably just the air kicking in, and the door wasn't completely closed. I just keep trying to make sense of it. After maybe 40 minutes, my son starts screaming. That isn't like him to just wake up screaming. I go in and it takes about 15 minutes to calm him down. I'm sitting in his rocking chair facing his bedroom door. I'm already a little shaken over everything weird happening, but mostly concerned with calming my son down now. Then the TV turns on by its freaking self in the living room. There is no rationalizing it at this point. Tears immediately start and I start shaking. I'm absolutely sure a demon is about to backwards crawl at me right now. I start figuring out what the absolute heck I'm supposed to do at almost midnight with my infant son. I can't call my husband to come home because I think there's a ghost. I just stare with my eyes as opened as possible with tears pouring out. After a few minutes of unrelenting fear, I was able to get my son into bed and tiptoe out before cautiously checking everything in the living room. Nothing else was out of the ordinary, beside the TV being on. I decided to leave it on the night and literally said, "I'm leaving the TV on for you. Please don't scare me anymore." And I went to my room and closed the door. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night, but nothing else happened. It does sound like a poltergeist, or at least a bored spirit. Guess he just wanted to watch TV. Hope something good was on. Case file number 2305, written by Anonymous. Orbviously not alone. I saw a UFO up close, and I mean very close. So much so that now I have this knowledge that alien life is on our planet, and they must be here for a reason. I also can't take walks at night anymore, because now looking up at the night sky scares the crap out of me. I was walking to a gas station about a mile straight up the road from my house to grab a few beers, and I can't remember exactly what I was doing, scratching the back of my neck or fixing my hoodie, but my head was tilted slightly upwards, and I saw this stream of light enter my view. It could have been going so much faster than the few cars I saw occasionally on the road. Speed limit was 55, but as soon as I saw it, my head snapped straight up almost like an instinct, and the second I made complete eye contact with it, it stopped on a dime. Just sat there for 2 to 3 seconds, and I'll never forget the look. It was an orb. It looked like a glass ball, about the size of one of those huge beach balls you see in movies, and in the corner was this crazy bright white light. I feel like whatever or whoever that was definitely acknowledged, because why else would it stop and sit there the way it did? After the few seconds that it was just sitting there, it made this U-turn-like motion, as if it was turning back around to go back the way it came. But the speed that it did it was like light speed. It went so fast that I didn't even see what direction it went in. It was almost like it just got snapped out of existence. I stood there for a few more seconds, not even believing what I just saw. When I say it was an orb, because that's exactly what it was, the thing was just a little bit higher up than the telephone pole, so it was close enough that if I had a baseball or something, I probably could have hit it. I continued walking to the gas station, going over it again and again in my head. And right when I got there, I heard and then saw a completely blacked out helicopter flying straight in the direction that orb was going, not knowing that it changed directions, probably because of me. They were also about 10 or 11 minutes too late, so I know whatever government persons or army base in the area saw it too. The whole ordeal only lasted like 3 seconds tops, but it's something I'll remember until the day I die. So I was thinking maybe it was ball lightning or a spiritual orb, but the government being involved does make it seem more like it could be aliens or some sort of experiment. It sounds like an advanced probe, maybe an alien probe, and they would have them too, wouldn't they? Case file number 2306, written by Fruity Pony. Blink, please. In the 5th grade, age 10, before school would officially start, we were all supposed to sit in organized lines in the gym. We were allowed to talk, get on our electronics, and read and stuff. While I was sitting in the very back of the gym, I was reading, and decided to look away from my book to rest my eyes and just generally look around for a bit. My eyes landed on this girl that was sitting all the way across a huge gym at the very front. She was looking right at me. I didn't know her, and had never seen her in my life. She was just staring at me, with her wide eyes without even blinking. Then she slowly raised her hand and waved at me, slowly smiling. I awkwardly waved back and then pointed to myself to non-verbally ask if she meant me. She slowly nodded. Throughout the rest of the waiting time, I snuck glances and caught her still staring at me, all the way until the bell rang. She was probably being friendly, but I don't know why she picked me out in a crowded room full of rowdy kids, and all the way across a huge gym. And I still don't know what the staring was for. But the weirdest part is, I never saw her again, and no one knew who she was. Case file number 2307, written by Husband Girlfriend Says Hold. I'm sorry, who's calling? Christmas Eve, 1986. My aunt and uncle lived in Havre, Montana. He worked the night shift for the railroad, and did not come home Christmas morning. They were religious, had 3 young children, and this was very unlike him. My aunt tries calling the railroad. They refuse to give her any information. She's worried sick. Many hours later, higher-up railroad officials arrived to tell her that my uncle had an accident at work, crushed between the couplings of the train. Relatives start to arrive to comfort my aunt. The phone is ringing non-stop with condolences, etc. But occasionally, my aunt will answer and start swearing at whoever is on the other line. As I said, religious people, this is not in her character. She tells us someone is calling her and impersonating my uncle. We think she is distraught and start answering the phone instead of her. We all got phone calls in my uncle's voice repeating, "I'm sorry," over and over. None of us can believe someone can be so cruel, pranking a new widow, especially at Christmas. We call the police and the phone company to report the calls and ask for them to be traced. Meanwhile, the railroad is doing shady crap. My uncle kept an apartment in another town to sleep at during work stretches. The railroad has sealed it during their investigation, looking for who knows what, substances maybe, to try to minimize their liability. Lawyers show up at her door, wanting her to sign papers not in her best interest. The phone calls continue. Same voice, same message. Eventually, we were allowed into his apartment that had been sealed. There are items belonging to another woman in the apartment. The phone traces come back. The calls had been coming from his sealed apartment. He had his home phone number pre-programmed into his phone and answering machine combo. His apartment phone had been calling his home phone and playing his answering machine. "I'm sorry, I can't come to the phone right now. but only the "I'm sorry" part. The call stopped after 3 days. Huh. Well, I mean, this one could just be a technical glitch, but maybe not. Maybe it was him manipulating the electronics to just call and say, "I'm sorry." Either way, though, that's a brutal story. Sorry. Case file number 2308, written by, no need for that. The night even the frogs went quiet. This summer, my 17-year-old daughter was working a late night shift. It was a little after midnight when I left to pick her up. When I stepped outside, it was eerily silent. You couldn't hear the frogs, insects, nothing. I stood there just waiting to hear them again, but I had this awful feeling something was watching me. I got in the car and just shook off the weird feelings and turned the radio up loud to distract myself. So I start driving down the road with my brights on, have many deers in the area, and make a right-hand turn into another road. Making the turn, my headlights caught a glimpse of something. It was black, quick, and jumped from the roadway onto the side of a steep hill on the opposite side. I was scared at this moment. I was afraid to drive past this area. For the remaining drive, I kept trying to rationalize what I had just seen. Was it a deer, some animal, maybe an alien? The possibilities were endless, but I had never seen anything like it. When we made it home, the nightlife noises were back and thriving. There was no eerie feeling that something was lurking nearby. A couple weeks had passed, and I had spoken with a neighbor that lives 10 minutes away. We live way out in the country, and she said some weird things had been happening around here. I thought maybe she meant a thief or coyotes. Then she said, "You might think I'm crazy, but..." She goes on to tell me about how silent it would get at night, more often, and there was some dark figure that they had seen. Not just her, but also a few other people that lived nearby. So I tell her of my ordeal, of the night I had experienced it. I told her it was hard to explain exactly what I'd seen because I'd never seen anything else like it. She asked me, "Did it look like a Dementor from Harry Potter?" Oh my goodness, yes, it did. She tells me her sister-in-law was out visiting and left after it was dark to go home, driving close to the area where my house is located. My neighbor gets a call from her sister-in-law. She's screaming and hysterically crying. They drove to where she was, and she was too scared to even open the car door. Eventually, she's able to tell them she saw something black crouching over in the roadway. She slows down and is being cautious, but this black figure stands up and jumps up to the nearest tree and climbs up it so fast and disappears. She was so shaken up that they had to drive her home. It never happened again. I haven't heard of any other stories of this from my few neighbors. I will forever be cautious when it goes silent on a hot summer night. Who can I even share this with, other than a few close neighbors that had also seen this mysterious black figure? If I told anyone else, they'd think I was crazy. Winters are usually silent here, and I hope whatever this thing was moved on, or at least is hibernating all winter. A Dementor just in the middle of the road that can jump, doesn't need to hover? I don't know, is that scarier or less scary? Maybe if it floats it's even scarier, but either way, I don't want to encounter this. Case file number 2309, written by Major Blazer 2112. Excuse me, sir. Have you considered Google Maps? When I was like 18, I went with my sister to the rallies by our house. I always look young, so I probably look like I was 14. This random guy pulled up while we were outside eating and asked us where the library was. So I told him to just keep driving straight on the road he was originally on. He asked me where I worked, and I told him. Then I told him I was getting ready to quit. He asked me if I wanted to work for him, but we'd be traveling a lot, and he couldn't afford 2 hotel rooms, but we'd share. I politely declined. A year later, I'm walking down the same street, and this same guy pulls over and asks me if I know where the library is. I tell him to just keep driving straight. He then asks me if I worked for him before. I tell him no, and he drives off. I move away for like 3 years, and then get an apartment like 3 blocks from my old house right next to the rallies. I'm walking to work on the same road, and the same guy pulls over and we have the same conversation. A year later, I'm walking again, and he pulls up and asks me where the library is again. This time I brought up the fact that he's asked me where the library is like 4 times in the past 6 years. He apologizes, then says that explains why I look so familiar, and asks if I want a ride, and tell him no, then he drives off. 2 years later, I'm walking down the same street and he pulls up again and asks where the library is, and I burst out laughing. He gives me a puzzled look. I inform him he has asked me this like 10 times. He apologizes, then asks me if I worked for him before, and I say no. He asks me if I want to, and I ask him what he wants me to do. He says he wants me to perform something inappropriate, and he'd give me $100. I laughed at him and told him no, I'm not like that, and to never stop and ask me where the library is again. Then I went to work and told my coworkers, and they made fun of me for a week. Ready? What really creeps me out is how the guy hasn't aged at all. I don't know, it could just be a guy that doesn't age a lot, or maybe he's stuck on some time loop? Strange, but doesn't seem like a good guy. Case file number 2310, written by JP1956. When the Exorcists needed an exorcist. It was 1976. I was a student at a Bible college in South Carolina. I was 20, so was my friend. It was a couple of years after the Exorcist movie came out, and there were many people in the charismatic church movement who were practicing exorcism or deliverance, as the church people like to call it. There was a couple I knew who thought they were Ed and Lorraine Warren. They had performed an exorcism on me. At the time, people in the church were saying lots of us were demonically oppressed, not actually possessed. This experience was really creepy, because I went into a state, now I think it was a type of hypnotism, where my body was given over to some force that made me thrash around and scream as though I had no control. However, that's another story. The story I'm about to write is about another girl and I, who decided to deliver her from her own demonic oppression. I believe I could perform it because I had experienced it. Her name was Loretta. We were roommates in the girls' housing of the school. It was an old house, about 70 years old. We were in the kitchen at the table. It was about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. In South Carolina, near the coast in the summer, they often have afternoon tropical storms that blow in suddenly, and have torrential rain that can last an hour or more. They sometimes have as much as 10 inches of rain in that time, and the winds can get up to about 80 miles an hour. Loretta had asked me to cast a spirit of fear out of her. I started reading Bible verses about fear, and I looked up at Loretta, and it looked as though spirals were coming out of her eyes. I thought there was something wrong with my eyes, so I didn't say anything. I read another verse and spoke to the spirit of fear in her. I rebuke it in the name of Jesus. When I did that, it was as if all hell broke loose. A spiral started coming out of her eyes, and it grew to about the size of the room. Loretta and I both started screaming. It looked to me as though a force was pulling Loretta's chair away from the table. She grasped the table and was holding on for dear life, all the while screaming bloody murder. The sky outside the window turned pitch dark, and the wind started blowing about 80 miles an hour. It rattled the windows. Then the wind was inside that kitchen with us, and it felt as though Loretta was going to be sucked into some kind of vortex. Whatever the force was, it felt like the most evil power I had ever encountered. We were both scared out of our wits. Loretta was holding onto the table with all her might, and I managed to get out of my chair, as far as the doorway of the kitchen, but I couldn't get past the threshold. I was stuck there, trying to escape, but not able to move past that doorway. I was yelling, "I plead the blood of Jesus, I rebuke you, in Jesus' name," and anything else I could remember preachers saying. Nothing seemed to faze this force. I started doubting the whole power in the blood and the power of Jesus' name. Then, as abruptly as it started, it stopped. There was no wind, no evil presence. Even the wind outside stopped, and the sun was shining again. She and I both ran out of the house and in separate directions, and found our friends and told them what had happened. We were both afraid to go back into the house. I don't know where Loretta went that day, but I stayed over at a friend's house. Loretta moved away, and I never spoke to her again. That's how frightening our experience was. We couldn't stand to even see each other again. Our friends believed us because that's the sort of atmosphere we were in. Everybody believed in demons and angels. I don't believe in any of that anymore, but I can't explain what happened that day. About 40 years later, I found Loretta on Facebook and messaged her, asking her if she remembered it. I wanted her to corroborate my story, because the few people I told this to, actually just my son and daughter, think I don't remember it right. But Loretta said she remembered it exactly as I recalled it here. The difference is that Loretta still believes that stuff. She believes we experienced a demon, and she still believes God has a purpose for her. That's a wild experience, and while I'm agnostic, I don't necessarily believe in that, or specific to a individual religion. I think these accounts are, they make you think, what else could have happened? Because could it be a collective hallucination? Seems unlikely. I don't know. Makes you think. Now time for the jokes of the day. My wife asked, "Did you eat the last pizza in the freezer?" I said, "Nah, I ate it in the living room." A police officer came to my house and asked where I was between 5 and 6. He seemed irritated when I answered, "Kindergarten." What do you call holy men who are obsessed with deep-fried potato products? Chipmunks. This one's good. I am definitely a chipmunk. My friend, with a stuttering problem, was just sent to prison. I fear he may never finish his sentence. What do you call a bear with no teeth? A gummy bear. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony, signing off.